Talk about what happened last night. The president wasn't busy enough after 3 appearances. He had to also preside over the swearing in of Amy Coney Barrett, and she is now the newest member of the Supreme Court, sworn in by Justice Thomas yesterday. Here's how it sounded.
It is the job of a senator to pursue her policy preferences. In fact, it would be a dereliction of duty for her to put policy goals aside. By contrast, it is the job of a judge to resist her policy preferences. Federal judges don't stand for election. Thus, they have no basis for claiming that their preferences reflect those of the people. A judge declares independence not only from Congress and the president, but also from the private beliefs that might otherwise move her.
As impressive as those comments sounded, Democrats weren't impressed, almost to a person. Ilhan Omar, member of the squad, says 6 of the last 7 popular votes won by Democrats, but 6 of the last 9. Republicans have appointed 6 of the last 9 judges. She goes to tweet, as does AOC, expand the court. And people are talking about, like the vice president, the former vice president, rotating judges. You can have your lifetime appointment, but I'll rotate you in and out of different courtships. Where's this going?
Well, I think it's pretty clear the Democrats are showing their hand. They've been dodging this question about court packing for some time. But to see some of the prominent figures in the Democrat Party come right out and say expand the court just because they didn't get their jurist of choice really shows where they're heading. But let's take a step back and look at what was a historic night at the White House last night. President Trump's first-term legacy is going to be rebuilding the judiciary. 3 SCOTUS appointments, nearly 300 federal judges confirmed across the country. And to Amy Coney Barrett's point, she's going to be an independent jurist that looks at the law as written and interprets it that way, not an activist on the court. What the Democrats want to see clearly is an activist for their own policies, and that's why they're talking about expanding the court. And American voters should be thinking about that as they head to the polls.
Well, I tell you what, Alyssa, the Democrats are steamed because 4 years ago, Merrick Garland did not get his day in front of the Senate. But then again, the Democrats held the White House and the Republicans held the Senate. And that is just one of the ways that our system works. Nonetheless, you mentioned court packing. Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, and Chuck Schumer of New York, of course, talked a little bit about the consequences of what the Republicans were able to do yesterday. This is from the Senate floor. Watch.
Nothing less than everything is at stake. A shift in the balance of the court that will last for decades if we do not act to correct it. And believe me, there are appropriate measures that should be considered.
And the next time the American people give Democrats a majority in this chamber, you will have forfeited the right to tell us how to run that majority.
What the appropriate measures are that they're referring to, we don't know right now. You can only speculate. Elizabeth Warren, also a senator, sent out a fundraising letter yesterday and said they stole another Supreme Court seat 8 days before the election. Alyssa.
Well, I think it's interesting that the Democrats constantly accuse President Trump of tearing down institutions, yet they're the ones who want to reshape and change the Supreme Court just because elections have consequences, and they didn't get the jurists that they wanted. Or they want to tear down the Electoral College, which dates back to our founding, because they don't like who won the election. It's this president who's actually operating under the Constitution by the authorities vested in him by our founders. And the Democrats are frankly just seem to be losing their minds because they're just not getting the results they want. And it's because the American people aren't with them.
Alyssa, Joe Biden, we heard him say that he wants rapid testing when it comes to COVID in pharmacies, just like you could get a pregnancy test over the counter. He wants more of those. What's the latest on the rapid test, on the vaccine, and the rise in cases in our country?
Yeah, great question. So under President Trump, we actually just deployed 150 million rapid point-of-care tests across the country. We distributed them to states and then to nursing homes. So it's up to states to determine, do they want to put them into retail sites like a CVS or a Walgreens, or do they want to surge them to schools? But this is an incredible number of tests on top of the more than 100 million we've already conducted. We continue to produce them, and we want to put more into the marketplace so that you can get them at your local CVS. But I would remind Vice President Biden, you can't just snap your fingers and get that. You have to produce these tests, and this president has done it in a rapid time frame. We do have some good news coming on both therapeutics and vaccines. We're still very confident that by the end of the year, we will have a safe and effective vaccine on the market for millions of Americans. And we monitor cases as they're rising. One thing I would note for your viewers, because we are seeing an uptick in cases, when you put 150 million additional tests into the marketplace, you will see more positive cases. And it's a good thing because it means we're catching and isolating cases. But we're monitoring hospital capacity, we're deploying PPE as needed, and getting help as needed.
Alyssa, we do see the cases surging across the country, but around the world as well. Wisconsin especially, we see a lot of concern over in Utah, and we see places like El Paso, Texas. But let's look at the big picture, and that is the stimulus that most agree that we need, even though we're in deficit spending, needs something done. Now that this is passed, has there been conversation with the President, Mitch McConnell, and others about getting some type of stimulus program, a rescue plan this week?
So the president has been in touch with Hill leadership, and Secretary Mnuchin spoke with Speaker Pelosi yesterday. We're confident that we can get something in the coming weeks. There's still some debate, with the Democrats over whether it's state and local bailouts or just getting the direct funding to Americans. But make no mistake, this president is committed to getting help.
Not this week.
We're hoping within weeks. I don't want to get too ahead of any announcements.
Speaking of announcements, it sounds like the administration, in the form of the president probably, according to Politico, will announce that the COVID vaccine should be free for people on Medicare or Medicaid. I know you don't want to get ahead of the president and announce it right now, but what can you tell us about that? Because a lot of people, we'd heard that perhaps by the end of October we could have a vaccine. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But at least now we're going to know whether or not we have to pay for it.
Yes, and due to just the unprecedented nature of this pandemic, we've looked at every lever that we can pull to make sure those who need it the most can get it for free or discounted. So that's definitely under consideration. We expect some very positive announcements coming on that front soon.